IVM.
This week's episode of the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast is brought to you by Storytel. Storytel is a website where you can get access to ebooks and audiobooks like never before. And for the duration of their sponsorship of our show, we're going to be recommending a new book to you guys each week to listen to or read. This week, we're recommending the book A Clear Blue Sky by Johnny Bairstow, written in partnership with Duncan Hamilton. This is an amazing story that was awarded the Sports Book of the Year by the Daily Mail, and it's about Johnny Bairstow's journey from being a young child, dealing with adverse circumstances, and finding his way to the top of the game. It was published in 2017, so it doesn't quite address the World Cup triumph they had in 2019, but it's still an incredible story about triumph over adversity and a really, really well-written book. Listen to it on Storytel, and if you go to storytel.com/IVM, you get a 30-day free trial instead of the normally available 14-day free trial. So again, go to storytel.com/IVM to get this great deal. And now for this week's episode. Welcome to episode 81 of the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. I'm your host this week, Ashwin, and we are a little bit late this week. We're recording on a Wednesday. Hopefully it should release sometime soon. But that's, of course, because everybody across India and the globe has been celebrating Diwali. So wishing all our listeners a little bit belated Happy Diwali. Varun and DJ are both with me. Varun's in Singapore, DJ is in London. Guys, how are you doing? DJ, how did you enjoy your Diwali weekend?
Yeah, it was great. Thank you very much. Lots of stuff's been happening in the world of cricket. So a cracking week, so to speak.
And Varun, how about you? It's early morning as we record for you, but again, trying to enable the time zone. How was your Diwali weekend? Did you get a chance to celebrate?
Yeah, it was good. Played some cards, and so it was good fun.
Awesome. So let's get right into it. Lots happening in the world of cricket. We have a fun first half together, all three of us. And then in the second half, we have a special guest joining us. But let us start with the last time we joined you at the end of episode 80. We were talking kind of midway through the third test between India and South Africa. We now all know how that ends. It's crazy how fast the world of cricket moves, but it feels like forever ago. But obviously, DJ was the winner of our prediction contest. So he predicted at the beginning that the series would end 3-0, and he did win that correctly. So Varun and I sit here disappointed. DJ, congratulations on the win. We should do a prediction for the next series as well, and hopefully we can keep tally of who's doing well. But so far, DJ's right on top of this table. So, of course, the series ended, but I want to start with what the South African captain said recently in the press that's making some news. So Varun, let me ask you this first. Faf Du Plessis came out and said this, and I'm going to read it verbatim because my blood boils when I read it, but I'll save my detailed comments for later. He says, and I quote, "Every test match, they bat first, they score 500, they declare when it's dark, they get 3 wickets when it's dark, and when day 3 starts, you're under pressure. It was like copy and paste in every test match," end quote. Varun, your reaction to this from Faf Du Plessis?
I think it's ridiculous. I think it's absolutely ridiculous the way he's come out and he's making excuses. And like they make 500 every time. Yeah, but at the same time, when we go to South Africa, we are 15 for 3, 20 for 3. We've talked about it before. Test match cricket is unfortunately becoming a game where people are winning at home and losing overseas. But I think to come out and make this kind of a statement is a little bit crazy.
So, DJ, let me ask you, he specifically said this in the context of getting rid of the toss, because I think his point of view was we lost all 3 tosses, or South Africa lost all 3 tosses, which meant India batted first, put on 500, etc., etc. What do you think? Is there any merit to his statement? I think we've written about this on our blog before, but is there any merit to his statement about getting rid of the toss in Test cricket?
So I think there's 2 points to be made. One, I think we've written about it on our blog in the context of T20 cricket, where a team is chasing a target and the conditions don't change that much. So captains winning the toss in the IPL were choosing to chase because they would know how many runs they needed to get, right? The problem with what Faf has said really is, firstly, it will not go away because the traditional way that Test cricket is played is that you have a toss, right? I don't see that going away anytime soon. Secondly, it's such a bad look coming from a team that has been basically whitewashed 3-0 and hasn't really competed other than for parts of the first test. It's just a very poor look on South African cricket. Kohli got a lot of flack during the World Cup for his comment about a small boundary on one side not helping his spinners. But for Faf to bring out someone else to do the toss, I think last week you said it was disrespectful, right? And Graeme Smith was livid. And pretty much Bavuma, that's all he did in that test match as well. So for him to bring out somebody else to do the toss, it was trying to make excuses for what was a poor performance on what were not spin-friendly pitches. South Africa was simply outplayed, and the team would have done well to acknowledge that. And I thought it was a very poor look for South African cricket. So
yeah, I couldn't agree more. DJ said it more eloquently than I would. I was just incredibly angry reading this because, of course, the team scored 500. That means your team couldn't take 10 wickets. And, of course, you lost 3 wickets. I mean, you're blaming the light, and it just means you couldn't survive the quality Indian bowling. So India is a force to be reckoned with at home. We have plenty of healthy debate with folks on Twitter about why, for some reason, India's home record is taken less seriously than Australia's home record or England's home record. I think it's something we should be incredibly proud of. So anyway, I'll end my rant there. End of India-South Africa series. Lots of interesting things in the world of Test cricket from a format standpoint, though. So the next thing that happened that was really interesting is Kohli sort of reacting to the poor crowds at Ranchi and the poor facilities and crowds at Pune, said something to the effect of, India should only have 5 test venues. He basically said they should choose the top 5 centers, have only 5 venues, and that'll allow for kind of a better growth of test cricket in the game. Let T20 and ODI cricket be played across the country. Varun, let me start with you. How did you react to that? Did you think that was kind of expected coming from him? And what is your response?
No, I didn't think it was expected. I didn't have any idea they were thinking about this, but I actually back the idea. I think it's a great idea. I think when you go to England and Australia, you know exactly, even South Africa, you know exactly where you're going to be playing, you know what the pitches are going to offer. So I actually personally really like the suggestion, and it's just interesting for me. I think the key thing is, if you think about how to increase the crowds at a test match stadium, for example, this is one option. The other option, which you'll talk about later, is the day-night. So it's just interesting. The focus is to get people back into the stadiums, but I kind of like this idea of having 5 wins.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. I think you have said it well. DJ, let me ask you, I mean, big country, lots of cities, lots of grounds. The obvious kind of big 5 are Kolkata, Delhi, Chennai, Mumbai, and maybe Bangalore. But then what do you do with grounds like Mohali and Hyderabad and Nagpur? I mean, is it easy? Is it going to be easy to choose which 5?
So it's not going to be easy to choose which 5, but I think there was a clue in what Kohli said. I think he said that ODIs and T20s, fine, give it to these smaller venues and let them kind of share those around. But Test cricket should be the pinnacle of the game, and teams should know that they're going to come to a Delhi or a Wankhede or a Chepauk or a Chinnaswamy, and they know where they're going to play. Kumble, funnily enough, actually supported this point by Kohli and said you should add test matches depending on festivals. So there's a Pongal test that used to be played for many years in Chennai. The 5 is going to be quite difficult to choose, and I think the reason is Delhi is not a great ground, although we're all from Delhi, and I know it sounds like sacrilege to say that, but the Kotla isn't a great viewing ground for the viewer itself. So the facilities need to be improved. Chennai's had issues with its stands for quite a long time. They've got some dispute going on with the local municipality or the local authority of some kind, which means that those stands remain empty, right? So I think a ground like Mohali probably needs to be thought about. A ground like Indore, which Kumble actually said while he was coach, it was an incredible experience because it was full. The ground was full. So we need to think about what grounds we're going to give these test matches to, and we need to think about connectivity to those grounds, because for you, for example, or for Varun, you can actually plan a holiday around going and watching the Chennai test in the winter, maybe. So we need to take all of that into account and make the calendar, like we know that there will be a test match at the MCG on Boxing Day, right? So it would be great if Indian cricket could come up with something like that.
Yeah, fair enough. I think you said it really well. So it's lots of interesting things to think about. And it's a good segue to Dada or Saurav Ganguly taking over the BCCI, as we talked plenty about last week, seems to be making his first pretty aggressive move. And that is pushing for a day-night test at Eden Gardens. I'm sure there's some sort of selfish politics at play, if you will, given that he's from Kolkata and served on the West Bengal Cricket Association as well. But it looks like India's going to get their first day-night test match in the upcoming series versus Bangladesh. So lots to talk about the limited over series against them. But DJ, let me start with you this time. What is your thoughts about that? It feels like India was kind of against the day-night test match. Now with Dada coming on and the need to draw more supporters in, do you think this is a good move?
Yeah, I think it's something that needed to be done and India needed to take a bigger part in day-night cricket. I think there have only been about 11 test matches, so this will be the 12th one. And this is the first one going to be played in winter. So dew is obviously going to be a factor. But we'll come to the practicalities of all that later. I think what Dada is looking at is to try and get the crowds back in love with Test cricket. And the crowds at the ground, we've heard so much from people on Twitter, the anger that the facilities are bad, that the car parking is so far away. The fan at the ground doesn't get enough importance. And I think what Kohli and Dada have jointly done is Kohli, with his comments that Test cricket needs to be played at the elite venues, and Dada with day and night cricket being pushed forward, is they're trying to bring people back into the grounds. And I think it's a great move for people, to make it easier for people to come and watch the game after work. And we saw what it revolutionized one-day cricket. I'm really hoping it can revolutionize Test cricket again.
Yeah, well said. So just to be clear, I think at the time of us recording this, it feels kind of like a done deal, but I don't believe the BCCI has formally officially announced it. So it might happen in the next day or two. It's the second test that kicks off November 22nd at Kolkata. That's likely to be the day-night test if it happens, but watch the space. As soon as we know more, we will share it with you guys.
I think they've actually, Ashwin, I think they've actually confirmed that it will be a day-night event. I think we actually tweeted to Akash Chopra and people replied to that saying that it has been confirmed. So CricViz and Cricinfo have confirmed it.
And it's at Dada's home ground.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, where
That's
else?
going to be great. Okay, I must be a little bit late on the game. So it sounds like it is confirmed. November 22nd will be the first day-night test match in India. So very, very exciting. But enough about test cricket. We're moving on to limited overs. The pulse never stops with Indian cricket. So India is playing Bangladesh in a T20 series. It kicks off on Sunday, November 3rd, which is only a few days from now. They're playing 3 T20s in prep for the upcoming World Cup next year. But a lot has been going on in the world of Bangladesh cricket. And for a while, there was a long sort of drawn Bangladesh player strike. I think they came to a final conclusion. They settled on a pay hike. So it looked like it was all going to be okay. And then Shakib Al-Hassan was in the news for a day. It was a little bit strange. I think he was kind of the leader in this player's strike. Then as soon as it looked like it was going to get over, we've now just heard, just recently, hot off the press was announced that he's now going to serve a ban, which looks like it's a 2-year ban with a 1-year suspension. I'm not exactly sure of the difference between those two things, but it looks like he'll be back to playing the game the 29th of October 2020. So Varun, let me ask you, what's going on with Shakib? What happened? And this seems like it's all unraveled so fast, I haven't had a chance to process it.
Yeah, so there's something that's happening that feels a bit funny in this whole thing, right? Because you suddenly hear about Shakib leading the Bangladesh players against the BCB. Literally, on October 19th, he slammed the new BPL rule. On 21st, he led the Bangladesh players on strike. On 23rd, he says, we call off the strike and we return to playing. On October 28th, he didn't turn up for the national team's training session on 2 out of 3 days and could miss the India tour. And suddenly the next day, ICC steps in and has banned him from all forms of cricket. So that to me is surprising in itself. I'm still trying to read up a little bit more about this, but as per my knowledge, there was an interview with him in January this year where he kind of already alluded to this. So why wasn't any action taken then? And then now, after this BCB and ICC ruling, suddenly he's allowed to play cricket again on 29th October 2020, which is 1 day before the next T20 World Cup starts. So, I just wanted to recap that scene a little bit for our listeners. DJ Ashwin, if I've missed any fact, just jump in. But something definitely seems off.
No, I think you said it really well. Very interesting to see how this has all happened in the span of 10 days. So thanks for that timeline. DJ, is there anything Varun missed or anything you have to add to this?
No, I think you've summarized it really well, but I just wonder whether we're connecting dots that are completely on different pages. Because the ICC banning Shakib is, yes, it's convenient that way that ban ends, but I'm not sure that the BCB actually had much to do with it, and the strike and stuff. I think the timing is just a coincidence in a lot of ways. Although I'm sure there will be conspiracy theories connecting the dots. But there is concrete evidence against Shakib. Or when I say against Shakib, he hasn't actually indulged in any wrongdoing, but there's WhatsApp messages of him wanting to meet this alleged bookie, and he's deleted some WhatsApp messages and stuff. So it's a bit murky what's going on, and he's accepted that he was in the wrong, and he's previously reported such approaches, so he's well aware of the issues. In fact, Mohammad Ashraful, who's the ex-Bangladesh captain who was banned for match fixing in the BPL, I think in 2014. Shakib actually came out against him very strongly in the as a witness during that disciplinary hearing and stuff, saying, why did he not report it and all of that stuff. So it's unfortunate that the world's number one all-rounder is going to miss his country's kind of first day and night test match against India. He's going to miss an entire year's cricket, which, I mean, it's not good for him. It's not good for the game. It's unfortunate for Bangladesh cricket because, I mean, it's kind of 2 steps in front and 1 step behind for them, right? So it's just sad throughout. And I mean, hopefully he can come back as well as somebody like Steve Smith did, who realized how much they missed the game after they sat out for a whole year.
Yeah, I think really well said. It's interesting now. So as we move forward, you mentioned Steve Smith, but it seems like the year of stand-in captains because after Tim Payne captained Australia, Mominul Haq is now going to be Bangladesh Test captain, while Mahmudul Riyad is going to lead the T20 squad. So it's going to be a big blow.
Why isn't Mushfiqur the captain? Do we know? I don't know this guy, this Mominul Haq guy. Do we know what he does?
He celebrates prematurely, so you can't have that as a captain.
You said it so seriously that DJ believed you for a second.
Yeah, he might celebrate winning the T20 World Cup in the group stage only.
Well, if he wins the toss, then he might start celebrating. So you're just sort of.
But he'll be hanging out with Faf for that. I mean, like Faf, if he wins the toss, will celebrate now. I think that's what he should do. Anyway, we digress.
Yes, we digress just a little. So that's enough about Bangladesh. I think the series kicks off Sunday. It's going to be disappointing to play a series without Shakib, but obviously seems like the right call was made. Let's talk a little bit about the India squad for the T20 series that's coming up. So I want to get into the specifics of the squad, and I'm going to ask you guys a couple of questions. But the first notable omission, who's still on the sidelines, is our man MS Dhoni. And so, DJ, of course, I have to come to you first because why not? But it sounds like the comment that was made about 4 or 5 days ago was 4 words said by MSK Prasad, the chief selectors from India. And I quote, he said, "We are moving on." Your response?
I think so. We spoke about this offline, right? And I think it's inevitable that he will quit the game. I don't think Dhoni is making a comeback, to be completely honest with you. What I'm glad about is he's let all the halla around the World Cup die down, right? And all the blame that was going to be laid at his door for getting run out or 25 to get or 12 balls and all of that stuff. He's just taken a step back completely. He's gone away from the game. And if he does retire now and he says, I'm done with this, there will be perspective on his contribution to Indian cricket. So I think it's inevitable that Dhoni, I don't think Dhoni is going to play the T20 World Cup, guys. So I think I've known that for a long time. I think we've joked about him playing the 2023 World Cup and stuff as well, maybe with a walker and a walking stick. But reality is, I think Rishabh Pant will be the limited overs keeper for the foreseeable future, and Saha is the test keeper for the foreseeable future. They're clearly grooming Samsung as well by their selection here. So I think Dhoni will very much stay in the background and he will make an announcement in his own time, which I think he has earned the right to do. There won't be a big kind of celebratory farewell or anything, but I think people will celebrate his contribution to Indian cricket, which is, I mean, the trophies in our cabinet say it's been immense.
So I think you just had your Vernon Philanderer moment as Varun by calling the young Kerala wicketkeeper Samsung. But anyway, we'll look past that for a second. And Varun, let me ask you, MS Dhoni, is this the way we all expected or wanted him to go? And is he done yet? Or are you and I the conspiracy theorists and think he'll be back for the next World Cup?
I don't know. I think I'm kind of agreeing with DJ now. I don't think he's going to play the next World Cup. But it was interesting, right? I think somebody, I can't remember who, maybe MSK Prasad came out and said, if Dhoni wants a farewell series, he'll get a farewell series. Ravi Shastri has come out and said, let him decide what he wants to do. There's been a lot of comments going around, but I'm just surprised that Dhoni's just gone quiet. He doesn't deserve to just kind of retire without a match. I do believe he should get some sort of a match to retire, but again, as you think about cricket and most sports, not many people get to retire on their own terms. So I think this is the end of the road for Dhoni.
Yeah, but I don't think he's going to retire with a cricketing match anymore. He doesn't. I don't think he needs to, right? It would have been ideal for him to go out with a World Cup win. I mean, no doubt about that.
That is for sure. But I'm saying the whole way, Dhoni is probably almost at a Sachin level, right? In terms of what he's done for the game. Maybe not for our age group in terms of memories. We were 10 years old when Sachin was doing what he was doing. But I mean, yeah, I think I think Dhoni, to me, is the type who probably may not want the farewell series, but people around him will probably.
Yeah, but Sachin also didn't have that break, right? Dhoni hasn't played since the World Cup, man, which is when June? Where are we now? July? It was July, so we're in October now. He hasn't played for 3 months. I don't see him coming back, man. Sorry, but...
Going back to training with the Jharkhand under-23 team in Jan. That's confusing.
Maybe he's trying to make a comeback for them.
Yeah. Maybe he's trying to be under-23 again.
A's no bar. It's not the A's. It's the mileage.
Maybe. So you heard it here first. Maybe Dhoni will play for Jharkhand under-23s in the new year. But anyway.
He'll just grow his hair long and come back as MS.
I don't know how that white beard is going to fool anybody, though. So maybe he's going to shave and we'll see a whole new thing from him. But anyway, on to the more important topics. Who did they select for the T20 squad anyway? As DJ mentioned, Sanju Samson has made a comeback. So I'm not going to go through the whole squad. You have the usual suspects in Rohit, Shikhar, Rahul, etc. Varun, let me ask you about Sanju Samson. He just made 212 in the Vijay Hazare Trophy. He's sort of a batsman that over the years has blown hot and cold, but when he's been good, he's been unbelievably good. So is it the right call to bring him in? I know you used to feel pretty strongly that we shouldn't be bringing new players into the fold ahead of the 2019 ODI World Cup. Is this the right time to bring a new wicketkeeper into the fold for the 2020 T20 World Cup?
Yeah, I think it is. And I think T20 cricket is a little different to ODI. I think we still have one IPL to go. You're probably going to see one or two new names even from that IPL, hopefully. But I'm very, very happy that Sanju Samson is in. I've been a fan of him for quite a few years now, and I believe he deserves to play. I think that's two interesting points. One is the team now has a KL Rahul, a Sanju Samson, and a Rishabh Pant, all of whom are probably decent T20 wicket keepers. And at the same time, you mentioned, Samson blows hot and cold. We know Pant blows hot and cold. So it's going to be very interesting. Are you going to have a middle order with Samson and Pant in the same kind of playing 11? And what happens when that doesn't work out? So it'll be very interesting. But all I'm hoping for is that both these guys get games.
Yeah, well said. I mean, I could see either of them being in the 11 as a specialist batsman too, right? So that's going to be really interesting. DJ, the other interesting selection was Shivam Dube, who came in, who had a sort of mixed IPL, didn't really get all that many games, didn't really perform all that well, but has had a really strong domestic season since. So he comes in sort of as a like-for-like replacement for Hardik Pandya, who's still recovering from his back injury. I think he's still in London. But thoughts on that selection?
Yeah, I think he's been doing consistently well for the... he didn't have a great IPL, but ever since then, he's been doing pretty well, both with the ball and the bat. And I mean, if there was ever a time to try out a new player in the absence of Hardik, I think this is it. And it, again, helps that you play for the franchise that the captain plays for. But actually, Kohli isn't playing this series, is he? So... Maybe there's no conspiracy theory there, but yeah, glad that Dube has made it into the squad, and I'd like to see him at the international stage before the T20 World Cup.
Yeah, I probably should have opened with that. Virat Kohli has rested himself, or has been rested, or is taking a break, whatever we want to call it, and Rohit Sharma is going to lead the T20 side against Bangladesh for the 3 matches. So pretty much everything else is very similar to the South Africa T20 series, the squad for that just completed. I think the 2 other noticeable changes is Yuzvendra Chahal is back in the squad, which is great. I think quality leg spinner. It's important we have at least one leg spinner in the side. We have Rahul Chahar, who's continuing to keep his spot. So Chahal coming back is a good second leg spinner. And the piece that I really didn't want to have to talk about or ever address, hopefully again, is the inclusion of a certain fast bowler. And that's in replacement for Navdeep Saini. They've brought back Shardul Thakur. He last played in the Nidahas Trophy in 2018, which is right around when we started this show. So 81 episodes ago is when Shardul Thakur last played T20I for the team. I continue to be bamboozled and baffled by why he finds a spot in the side. I don't know if either of you has anything to add. I have nothing more to say. I hope Khalil and Chahar are the 2 quicks that play, with Dube kind of slotting in as that third seamer. But I just really don't want to see Shardul Thakur get a game.
I was more excited to see Shardul Thakur in the squad than I was to see either Samson or Dube.
Yeah, I heard that, and I saw you screenshot me a picture, and then you tweeted about it. So I know you're enjoying this more than I did.
Yeah, and I'm going to send you the picture that we have with Shardul Thakur again.
I have about 19 copies of it on my phone, because every time he gets selected, you send me the picture. So I have to keep deleting all of them.
Yeah, awesome. I hope he gets a game and he does really well so we can send it to you again. Anyway, carry on.
Then what? What's the end game? Is he going to play for us in next year in Australia?
No, but we have Khalil who's also in the squad. I mean, we've got all these great seamers.
But Shardul is not one of the top 8 seamers for India to play T20s. So why does he keep getting picked? Anyway, enough about that before I start to get more upset. All right, guys. So as we've started to do, we have a 3 T20 series coming up against Bangladesh that kicks off this Sunday, as I mentioned. I'm going to go around and ask for some predictions. So DJ, let's come to you first. What is your prediction for the T20 series?
Given that I've had some pretty good luck with 3-0, I'm going to go with 3-0 again, particularly since Shakib is going to miss the T20, Tamim is going to miss the T20, someone called Mohammad Saifuddin is also ruled out of the India tour. So, I think 3-0 sounds like a nice round figure for me. You guys?
Varun?
Yeah, 2-1. I have to stick to 2-1.
Interesting. That's a big one. So I don't know how this works if we have the same guess, but I'm also going to go with 3-0. I have to believe it's going to be a sweep. So let's hope that works out well. I don't know. I hope I'm right in this time. So you guys heard it here. We'll keep tracking. We'll see how this ends at the end of this. Hopefully DJ doesn't go 2-0, but if he wins, then I win. So I don't know how to feel about this one, but we'll see.
Awesome. I hope Bangladesh doesn't beat us 2-1, in which case none of us win. But anyway.
Yeah, in which case the predictions are irrelevant. We have lots else to be sad about.
Correct.
Our last couple of things before we cut to break. We wanted to share, there's an interesting article. We're going to try sharing one new article every week. And I think DJ found this one, but it's a profile of the young batsman Yashasvi Jaiswal, who, it's an amazing story about this young guy who came from selling pani puris on the street and is now hitting double centuries in list A cricket. So we're going to post this in the show notes. Definitely give that a read. It's always great to continue to follow young talent coming out of India. And boy, is there a lot of it. But the last thing that's been going on in world cricket this week is the World T20 qualifiers. So we kind of ran through that in the last week. Varun, do you have any comment on Singapore's performance since your exciting early start to the show? Or to the tournament, rather?
No, I think that early start is all it was. Singapore didn't do that well after that. But I mean, to be honest, I didn't expect them to qualify, but they did better than I expected. So
premature celebration there as well, no, Varun?
Basically.
So Varun was the Mushfiqur of the T20 World qualifiers, let's say.
Didn't even get to the World Cup, started celebrating. Badhiya.
Unfortunately for me, Canada had sort of a similar fate. Started pretty strong and then fell down and ended up coming 5th, I think, in the group. So unfortunately didn't make it. So just to acknowledge the 4 teams that have already qualified to play the qualifier in Australia next October. It's Ireland, Papua New Guinea, Netherlands, and Namibia. So lots of excitement for, in particular, Papua New Guinea and Namibia, who haven't quite played this much on the international stage before. And then there are 2 more spots. And at the time of recording, those 2 spots are going to go to 2 teams out of Scotland, the UAE, Hong Kong, and Oman. So pretty exciting stuff. Hong Kong has obviously had some big performances before. We'll see who makes it through. So is Scotland. But pretty exciting. I hope these guys all are able to train up, have a really good performance next October. But very excited to see Associate Nations on the big stage and getting some good publicity as well. And with that, we're going to wrap up this segment of the interview, of the show, excuse me. We're leading into a new interview that we're going to have. So Varun is joined by a guest called Freddie Wilde in the second half of this show. Some of you may know Freddie from his Twitter handle @CricViz. He's an incredible cricket analyst. He does a lot of great work, and they've recently written a book called Inside the T20 Revolution. So for the second half of the show, Varun got an opportunity to speak to him. We'll take a quick break and come back to the interview between Varun and Freddie Wilde.
Hey everybody, welcome to another awesome week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you are not following us on social media, please make sure you do. And why aren't you following us? I've been asking you for almost a year now to follow us. Please do follow us. One of the things that I do ask you guys to do every so often is if you hear something you like, take a screenshot, tag us on social media. As I mentioned, we're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So this week, our Tamil podcast, Ponnai Selvan, is going to complete 100 episodes this Wednesday. Make sure you tune in for that. On The Scene and the Unseen, Amit is joined by Ira Mukhoti, author and historian. They focus on women of the Mughal era and discover a complex world where women are major players jostling for power. On the Paperback podcast, Rachita and Satyajit are joined by the co-founder of The Curious Reader, Devanshi Jain. They discuss how books like 4 Hour Work Week can motivate one to be more productive in life. Here's what's happening on our policy shows. On States of Anarchy, Hamsani is joined by Ritika to discuss different connectivity projects and their geopolitics. On Noyer Kanun, Amber talks about the Criminal Amendment Act 2013 and highlights the sections for the prevention of sexual harassment in India. On the Pragati podcast, Pavan is in the guest seat as he talks to Anupam Manur. They discuss how penicillin was discovered and tracks how drug discovery and development has evolved since then. On Ganatantra, hosts Alok and Sharyu are joined by Rajni Soren, an advocate activist who works in issues related to forest rights and practices in the Chhattisgarh High Court to talk about how the Adivasi movement has used the law and political institutions to protect their rights. On Feeding 10 Billion, hosts Varun and Ramya are joined by Dr. Ganesh Baglar, a pioneer of computational gastronomy who talks to them about the potential of data to understand the food we eat and even the possibilities of creating recipes through it. Here are a few podcasts that will motivate you this week. On the Empowering series, host Zarina Poonawala is joined by Neelam Kumar. She's a best-selling author, adversity coach, and cancer crusader. Neelam talks about how she defeated cancer and the myths and stigma around breast cancer. On The Habit Coach, Ashwin talks about the negative impacts of physical inactivity and how squats can help boost your metabolism. On Heal and Hearty, Rachna along with Bhavna is joined by Deepak Khera. They discuss how one can prevent heart disease and reduce the risk of sudden cardiac arrest. And with that, let's get you on with your show. Right, so this week we've got a very special guest with us. Freddie Wilde is here. Hi, Freddie. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
No, it's always great to talk to people like you. So, Freddie, before I let you introduce yourself, for all our listeners, this is a special segment today. Freddie has co-authored a book called Cricket 2.0 Inside the T20 Revolution. And it's released, I think, just recently, if I'm not wrong. And I mean, I'm personally looking forward to read it. I'm a T20 fan, almost to the point where some of my co-podcasters have actually called T20 popcorn cricket 10 years ago, but now they love it. Freddie, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the book.
Yeah, thanks. As I said, thanks for having me on. And yeah, and thanks for the introduction to the book as well. It was, I've written it alongside Tim Wigmore, who's another journalist over here in the UK. And Tim and I have been probably among the small number of journalists who have taken T20 cricket seriously. T20 is hugely popular, arguably the most popular form of cricket in the world now. But until very recently, and I probably think the 2016 T20 World Cup was the start of this, not many people really took it very seriously. And in the last couple of years, that's begun to change. And about 2 years ago, Tim and I were talking about T20 cricket, as we often did. And we sort of, that we had a lot of questions about the format that we'd like answered. And we sort of looked for a book that might tell us the answers to the questions. And we realized that there wasn't one. So we thought that we'd write one ourselves, which is what we've done. And the challenge, I suppose, in writing it was because there hasn't been much literature around T20 cricket. Our research, we couldn't go and read books for research. Because there weren't any. That was the point of the whole book in the first place. So what we did instead was we just had to speak to loads of players, loads of coaches, and loads of administrators. And it's actually meant that the book has become, a story told by them as much as it is by us, really. The book wouldn't have been possible without all the people we spoke to. We conducted over 80 interviews. Pretty much all of the major players of the first era of T20 cricket were spoken to. And they've given us sort of the inside track, I suppose, of how the format has grown, both on and off the pitch, and how the skills that players utilize have been transformed by the format.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting. And as I was reading a little bit about the interviews that you've done, it's phenomenal, the kind of diverse people you've got here. You've got people like Brendan McCullum, who really started off T20 cricket and the whole fireworks around it. You've got people like Ricky Ponting and Rahul Dravid, who are more of the test greats. You've got Venki Mysore, who's a boss of the Kolkata Knight Riders in the IPL, Trevor Bayliss. So it's a very nice combination of coaches, administrators, ex-players, test greats. What was it like talking to some of these guys? Did their opinions differ? Did everyone kind of come towards the same conclusion on T20 cricket, even though they may not have started out like that?
Well, it's a good question, actually. I mean, I think that they're all coming at it from different angles. I mean, apart from a very select few, all of the people we spoke to will have played other forms of cricket and made their names in other forms of cricket. You obviously alluded there to Ponting and Dravid. But even guys like, there are lots of, we spoke to Warren as well. Guys who have played longer forms of cricket and then sort of have adapted their view of the game since coaching and playing T20 cricket. And then there are the players who have played it, I suppose. But what they've all ended up converging on is sort of the idea that T20 is, in of itself, a very serious sport. And I think that's the sort of essence of the book is trying to, what we do early on is sort of tee it up and say, not many people treated it seriously, but it should be treated seriously because the skills are highly complex, and there's a lot of talent involved in what these guys are doing. All of the people we spoke to end up arriving at that conclusion, which is very much, that it is I think people derided T20 as sort of a game of slogging and that there's not much strategy to it. But the book hopefully sort of shows that to be rubbish, really. And in fact, there are arguments from Ricky Ponting that T20 is more strategic and more tactical than Test cricket. I think it was satisfying, if you like, that everyone sort of ended up at the same place, which was that T20 should sort of stand on its own 2 feet as a really interesting and complex sport.
Absolutely. I think, you said that very well, and that's my view as well. Tell me, it's interesting what's happening with T20 cricket today. One is it's becoming a lot more global. So you're seeing a lot more countries probably gravitating towards playing T20 cricket, and we've got the World T20 qualifiers going on right now, and Papua New Guinea has actually qualified. So firstly, it's great to see new teams coming in. It's also great to see a lot of investment and money coming in. And the third thing that I wanted to just touch upon is you've got players like Rashid Khan and Jasprit Bumrah who actually are some of the top players today. Bumrah, I think, is number 1 test bowler in the world, and he's come through the T20 ranks. So, there's a lot of stuff that's going on, positive influence of T20 cricket.
Yeah. Well, so it's a great point. Generally speaking, T20 is viewed as sort of the most accessible form of the game. It was created off the back of a marketing survey in England in 2003 when the ECB realised people weren't going to domestic cricket anymore, and they essentially asked people what they wanted. And people said that they wanted a shorter game. And it's therefore no surprise that T20 is the vehicle of the sport for growing the game, and the ICC recently have expanded T20 membership to include all members of the ICC. There are 100 now T20 international nations who play official T20 matches, and I think that's indicative of the fact that T20 is, as I said, it's the best format to connect with a new audience. So from a fan's perspective, it's doing that. And you made reference there to Papua New Guinea qualifying, and the game is growing, and T20 will be the format of the game that is used to grow it, because, as I said, of that accessibility. But then also, from a playing perspective, you'll see guys like, Rashid Khan, Mohammad Nabi, Sandeep Lamachane, Ali Khan, from non-traditional cricket countries, who have made their names in T20 cricket. And because of the nature of T20 cricket being league-based or domestic-based, there are no barriers. Nationality is no barrier to someone like Rashid Khan becoming the star of the IPL, which is the biggest T20 league in the world. And it's T20 sort of stimulated a democratization of talent. It doesn't matter where you're from; it just matters how good you are. And in no other format is that the case. And I think cricket or T20 is better for that. One of the themes in the book that we explore is the way that T20 has helped grow the game, both on and off the pitch. And ultimately, cricket's been blessed with some very talented players for whom that we'd never know about if it wasn't for T20 and for leagues like the IPL.
Absolutely. And so let me ask you then, where do you think T20 goes from here? How does this coexist with ODI cricket, with Test cricket? From a personal point of view, it feels like I'm most interested in watching Test matches and T20s, but a lot of my friends still enjoy ODIs, especially World Cups. We've got 2 T20 World Cups coming up in the next, I think, 3 or 4 years. How are these 3 formats going to coexist?
Well, it's the $1 million question. What will happen to cricket in the next 10 to 15 years is going to be extremely fascinating. The last 10, 15 years have been fascinating in of themselves, and it's only going to, quite what will happen next, no one is really sure. I think I've got my own view, which I think that T20 is likely to continue to grow, especially T20 in Asia and particularly the IPL. I think we already know that the IPL is going to expand probably to 10 to, well, it's certainly going to expand in terms of length, and maybe even as soon as next year, to span across 2 months. And there are suggestions that we're going to have 10 IPL teams soon. And I see the future of cricket looking India-centric and T20-centric. Quite what that means for the other formats, we've got to wait and see. And it's something we'll have to give somewhere. The schedule's already at breaking point. But I think what is fairly certain is that the IPL will continue to grow, because the fact is it's hugely popular, both, with people attending in the stadium, and then more significantly because the money comes from on TV. India has a booming population, a young population, a booming economy. All of these things point to one thing, which is more IPL and a bigger IPL. And I think the really interesting thing will be how that impacts the other formats of the game. But yeah, I think that if you're wondering what cricket will look like in 10 to 15 years, then don't be surprised to see a lot more T20 cricket played in India, because it's hugely popular there.
That's music to my ears. I always joke with all my friends, telling them that my favorite time of the year is April and May, because that's when I think 70 games are played over 6 weeks. And at the end of it, I just feel like I wish there was still one more. That's what the IPL is like. But tell me, it's interesting, in the UK, this concept called the 100 is coming up. They had the bidding last week. I have to correct myself, not auction. It's called the bidding. Is that a natural evolution? What's your view on the 100? The reason I ask is because it feels like the first ODI was played in 1971. 32 years later, the concept of T20 was evolved. And if my stats serve me right, in half the time, 16 years later, you've got something now which is called the 100. Do you see a place for this? What do you think is going to happen there? I know it's a test right now, but just interesting to get your thoughts.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting question, and it's going to be fascinating to see how it unfolds. Part of me thinks if it's successful, I could see other countries following suit, because it's shorter and therefore more appealing to broadcasters, and in some ways more appealing to broadcasters. They can fit into smaller windows, and I suppose, in a time-pressured world, it takes up slightly less time from people's days. The argument against that, I suppose, is that a 100 ball match takes less time, and therefore there's slightly less scope for advertising, maybe, which is obviously a huge driver of cricket generally, especially on TV. For example, I would be surprised if the IPL was to become a 100 ball tournament, because I don't see why the IPL would need to change from its current version. But I think, it will be fascinating to see how it unfolds. I think there's a lot of logic behind what the ECB are trying to do. They're trying to reach a new audience. And I think critically as well, one of the reasons it came about, and this is quite a complex thing for people to get their head around, I guess, but in England there's been always a lot of tension about trying to force through an IPL-style competition. We've obviously got 18 counties in England, and they are the counties who hold the votes in terms of forcing any new tournament through. The beauty of the IPL and all of these other T20 leagues is that with about 6 to 8 teams, you can have one match per day, 2 matches at the weekend, and therefore every match on TV, and you can build a sense of narrative around the tournament. You start to get used to, okay, RCB have lost again, or okay, this team are doing that, and you can be familiar with it. But the trouble in the UK is that with 18 teams, not all the matches are televised. And therefore the competition has always the county competition has always struggled to get a foothold alongside competitions like the IPL and the Big Bash. But why the ECB have now pushed for a 100 ball tournament is that while they were struggling to get through or force through a tournament, an 18 team T20 tournament or an 18 T20 tournament, when they offered the idea of a 100 ball tournament, I think the counties saw it as a potential opportunity to keep their own T20 tournament alive while also having this 100 ball competition on the side. And now we're having both of those tournaments. So I personally think it was a bit of a sort of vote winner, a way of getting it through the counties. But it may end up becoming transformative, as you said. ODI cricket led to T20 cricket, and maybe that will lead to the 100 being adopted around the world. I think, as I said, I'd be surprised if it happened in India, but we'll have to wait and see.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's an interesting take. I think for all the listeners, it'll be very interesting to see what happens with the 100. But Freddie, let me ask you, we're exactly 1 year away from the T20 World Cup. As you were talking to different players, coaches, what do you think teams are looking to gear up to do over the next 12 months? And do you think that T20 World Cup is now as much of a prize for teams as the ODI World Cup is?
I don't think it's quite there yet. I think a good example of it is how England obviously treated the most recent World Cup, 50 over World Cup, very seriously. Part of that was because they were playing at home, and Andrew Strauss, and the ECB sort of earmarked it as a key event for them to win. And now they're looking at the T20 World Cup, which is a year out, and they're not quite taking it quite as seriously. But I think other team it's beginning to change, and I think over time the T20 World Cup will grow to equal and if not surpass the ODI World Cup in terms of importance, largely simply because it's probably the most popular tournament. As we said already, T20 is the best vehicle for growing the game, and it's probably the most popular form of the game. So I expect to see the standing of the T20 World Cup grow. The next 12 months are going to be fascinating. I think we've got a really nice lead up now to the tournament. Lots of teams are, I was saying there that England aren't prioritising it as much as they did with the 50 over World Cup, but they are still playing more T20s in the next 12 months than they normally would, and so are most teams. I think Australia have got 21 T20s, India have got loads. So we've got 12 months of sort of teams refining their strategies. And I expect it to be a really exciting tournament in Australia on good pitches. There'll be high scores. And just like the 2016 World Cup was brilliant, I expect the one next year will be fantastic as well.
Absolutely. And I think there's one BBL to go, one IPL to go. So hopefully we see some new players as well emerging from those two tournaments.
Yeah, exactly. No, it would be really exciting. I think that, there are a few teams who are sort of standing out at the moment as potential winners. There are 4 teams I see as sort of being stronger than the rest, and that's West Indies, India, England and Australia, and then Pakistan obviously are world number 1. But whether they can adapt their game to succeed in Australia, where scores are going to be a little bit higher, you'd expect. Pakistan have done well by basically becoming very dominant in low-scoring games with a good bowling attack. It'll be very, very interesting to see how they, whether that works down under or whether they adapt their game plan. But yeah, for me, there are 4 standout teams at the moment. It'll be really interesting to see how they all shape up in 12 months' time.
Absolutely. And yeah, you can't count West Indies out of it. But if I'm not mistaken, Australia hasn't won a T20 World Cup, right?
Yeah, they haven't. So yeah, I mean, I think now I'm over here at the moment for, I'm watching them play Sri Lanka, and then they've got Pakistan. And there's very much a sense of, for the first time, Australia are really taking T20 seriously. I mean, part of that's obviously because they're hosting the event. But also I think it's because, as I said, there's that nice 12-month lead up. Australia have got a lot of good T20 players. They've almost got too many to know what to do with. And I think their challenge over the next 12 months will be working out what their best team is, as is the case, in fact, for a lot of teams. India, England as well, are in similar situations. And that's probably the product of the fact that there's so much T20 cricket played now. You almost end up with a surplus of options. Like you've got, 16, 20, 25 players who could feasibly be playing for you in the team. And the struggle is for the management to try and work out what that best 11 is and how to line up. And that's what we'll see over the next 12 months.
Yeah, I think that the best 11 question is interesting because they have to get that right. But I think even once you have the best 11, I think it's a lot of flexibility that's required in T20 cricket. Like in yesterday's game, actually, Steve Smith didn't bat.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of flexibility you require to win T20 games.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's one of the things, it's probably still one of the most untapped areas of T20 strategy is being flexible with your batting order. Traditionally your number 3 comes in at number 3 regardless of the score. But as we saw yesterday, Australia, had posted a 100 run opening stand, and there was no need to send in Smith, who is very much a sort of firewall anchor player. And they promoted Maxwell, and it worked brilliantly. Maxwell scored a rapid 50, and then Turner came in ahead of Smith right at the end. And that flexibility with the batting order is crucial. It's about picking a T20 team is very much about having set roles. And Smith's role at number 3 yesterday wasn't required. So it'll be interesting to see how teams sort of adapt their starting 11 and adapt their batting order to different situations over the next year. And that will be part of their planning as well.
Yeah, and on this podcast, we discuss Rishabh Pant to death. And part of what the 3 of us are putting out there in the universe is to try and see, can Rishabh Pant open the batting? And that comes down to flexibility as well, right?
Yeah. Well, are you guys are pro Rishabh Pant then, rather than being anti-Pant?
So I am very pro Rishabh Pant. The other 2 are neutral, I would say. But I'm so pro Rishabh Pant that I can't hear anything against him.
Well, I'm glad I'm talking to you and not the other 2 then. I'm very pro as well. So I'm not sure if he'll open the batting, but I mean, he absolutely has to play for India next year. And I hope that he's batting at number 4 beneath what I expect would be KL Rahul, Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli would be my ideal top 3 for India, with Pant coming in at 4. I think that would be perfect. Pant's proven himself to be very strong in the middle overs and against spin. I think that's a rare role. It's very difficult to find guys who can come in overs 7 to 15 and start quickly and score quickly with 5 men out, and with spin primarily bowling, and Pant does that well. Hetmeyer is another example of someone who does that. So does Paran. These guys are really rare and valuable, and I think it's best that you utilise them in that role. While someone like KL and Rohit can open the batting in the power play, where it's slightly easier. You don't need to be quite as good to bat in the power play because it is an easier game. So I think in a way your best and most dynamic players come in the middle when it's the toughest phase, and you can keep the run rate up between 7 and 15. That's when teams typically drop off.
Absolutely. Great. I'm very happy to hear that. So Freddie, when we have Rishabh Pant hit a century in T20 internationals, we're going to invite you back on this show to chat with me.
Absolutely. I'll be happy to come back on and talk about it all day long.
Perfect. So Freddie, that's the end of this segment. I just wanted to pass it to you. Any last words on the book? You want to tell our listeners where they can get it?
Yeah, well, you can get it on Amazon. It's available. You can buy it as a hard copy or get it on Kindle. Amazon's the best place to get it sort of for worldwide purchasing. If you're in the UK, then Waterstones or WH Smith, more normal bookshops, I suppose. But yeah, no, please do go and buy it. It's, it took a long time to put together, and it's probably the first sort of account of the history of T20 cricket. And there's no better time to buy it now than with 12 months to go to the T20 World Cup. So if you get it now, you can read up on it and impress your mates with your T20 knowledge.
Perfect. Thank you for that. I'm definitely going to read it before the other two guys who run this podcast. But thank you.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Perfect. Thank you. Bye.
And that brings us to the end of this week's show. Thanks for joining us for episode 81 of the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. As always, follow us on all social media at One Tip One Hand. We love hearing from you. Tweet us in, send us your questions, your comments, and we'll try to address them on next week's show. We'll be back in just about a week's time. Thanks so much.
Hi, my name is Anupam Gupta. I'm B50 on Twitter. I am the host of Paisa Vaisa, the show that talks money. On my show, I speak to experts from every field of money and finance, from stock markets, equities, debt funds, credit cards, life insurance, every possible area of money and finance that you can think of. We even did an episode on cryptocurrency. I've got fantastic guests from mutual funds to personal finance experts everywhere. Robo-advisory, startups, just name it, we've got it. At Paisa Vaisa, we help you make smart decisions about money. You work hard for money. Now make your money work hard for you. New episodes out every Monday, and you can listen to my show on the IVM Podcast app or any other podcasting app that you have.
Look! Up in the internet! It's a meme! No! It's a cat video! No! It's the Geek Fruit Podcast!
That's right, we interrupt this riveting broadcast to tell you about our show, The Geek Fruit Podcast, where Tejas, Dinkar and I, Jishnu, talk about everything in pop culture, including DC, Marvel, Star Wars, Netflix, and everything in between.
You know how your friends hate it when you ramble about some nerdy crap and you just want somebody to listen to you? Well, sorry, there's nothing we can do about that, but come listen to us ramble and it'll almost be like the real thing. Kind of.
Listen to new episodes of the Geek Fruit Podcast every Monday and the Geek Fruit Bulletin every Thursday on iTunes, Google Podcasts, the IVM app, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Happy listening, you nerds.